Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is What If Naruto and Ino Engage with Each Other Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. What do you mean Tsunade Ba-chan? Naruto asked as he rubbed the back of his head. He was now at the rank of Junin, and he was now 18 years of age, and a habit he was the spitting image of the Yondaime Hokage, Arashi Uzumaki. Don't call me that Naruto. Tsunade angrily retorted and flicked Naruto in the forehead sending enough that it made the point to stop calling her that. As I was saying, the Uzumaki clan is nearly extinct, you are the last. You will need to find yourself a girl or a few to ensure that the line continues. Now I know what there is an old law that states that if a clan is about to die out polygamy will be considered legal. Tsunade spoke with a sly smirk on her face waiting for Naruto to overreact. Naruto's eyes were wide with shock, his right eye twitched as his jaw hung open. But, how, he stammered in a rare moment of Naruto being speechless. Now I will be nice and set you up on a date with my apprentice Shizune. Or would you rather be on a date with Sakura? Brat. I know I'll arrange for you to have of them on different nights. Be gentlemen to them or I will send you flying like I do that pervert you train under. Tsunade cracked her knuckles to drive the point, and grandmotherly way when she saw him nod. Fortunately for Naruto neither of said apprentices were there. He sighed softly wondering how he got into this kind of mess. He never knew his clan was that important, say village treated him like filth. He scratched his cheek subconsciously, he wasn't sure how he was gonna survive this. No sane man would want to have that many women in. You may leave now Naruto. For now your mission is to find some girls to help ensure the continuance of your clan. Was all Tsunade said as she waved Naruto off. Once outside Tsunade's office Naruto once again rubbed his head. He was still trying to wrap his head around what just happened. Just as he was about to come to a conclusion, worst person for this situation came up, patted him on the back. It was none other than Jiraiya. And he was smiling that lecherous smile of his. Ha 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 ha. Naruto my boy, you get to live out every man's fantasy. Take this opportunity and marry all the pretty girls you can. Of course be sure to take a test drive first, gave his famous thumbs up smiling broadly. Only you would think that you Ero Sennin. Naruto said with a somewhat childish attitude for a moment as he crossed his arms over his chest glaring at Jiraiya. Honestly, could the old man be in public nonetheless? Oh come on Naruto. Who's gonna be first? Don't tell me that pink-haired girl you've been crazy about for years. Or is it the Hyuga heiress? Ooh, I know. It's going to be girl. I know you and her have been spending some time together. Jiraiya continued to harass his student while getting lecherous thoughts in his head. Just as Jiraiya looked, he noticed that something was missing. Naruto. Jiraiya could only smirk while thinking numerous lecherous thoughts. Naruto walked through Konoha muttering about a lecherous Ero Sennin. He had enough to worry about as it is. Just as if by good favor there was something to distract him to focus on the present. Naruto-kun. There you are. Came a boisterous feminine voice as he was suddenly glomped. He looked back to see it was Ino. She was the only girl he knew of with the ninja. Why were you taking so long to come visit me Naruto-kun? She said, acting like the spoiled princess she is, going into a fake pout. Ba-chan was telling me something about how I have to restore my clan. So she says I have to marry numerous women and make sure my clan is revived. Naruto said, oh, who he was talking to. Ino just smiled darkly and tightened her arms around his neck. Is that so? Was her response, her eye twitching in anger. There was no way she was sharing Naruto. It took her long enough to get him to start dating her in the first place, but then again if she was somehow the favorite it would be okay too. Can't. Breath Ino-chan, Naruto called out short on breath from how tight Ino had her arms around his neck. Ino realized she was pretty much strangling Naruto. She drew arms and smiled in embarrassment. So where are you taking me to dinner this time? And no Ichiraku, you eat enough of that stuff as it is. Ino chimed whilst nagging Hai, much to the dismay of Naruto, and his wallet. He ended up going to a fancy restaurant with Ino since for obvious reasons he couldn't say no to her. It was fortunate for Nar people stopped seeing the Kyuubi when they saw him. They now saw him as the son of the Yondaime Hokage, and as someone who would one day become Hokage. It made easier, even if he and Ino kept their relationship secret, it just made it easier for them. Especially since Naruto didn't want Sakura and Ino to start arguing like they were P. For the moment Naruto felt like his mission wasn't too important. He had the company of a lovely lady. Even if she was as mouthy as he was, oh that's right, he was ha with her, and he was thinking about how his life had changed. Nay, Naruto, are you listening to me? Ino bellowed out as she hit Naruto over the head. No problem at all. Naruto just gave her his genuine smile, and that seemed to keep her from yelling at him anymore. Of course, it just means that his life was going to be interesting from this point on. Of course I am. You were saying something about how you want me to get my own house, instead of living with Haku-chan, and Zabuza-san. He in all truth had been all Ino had been on his case about it for a while now. That's right, was all she said, while shooting Naruto the very look all men fear. Her dad warned me about that look, Naruto thought as he smiled nervously in fear. He ran his hand through his unruly spiky hair, afraid Ino would hurt him. Now are you absolutely sure? You can't just marry me? She had a very scary look in her eyes. Yes, Ba-chan's orders. Honest. But, even though I'm not keen on this, I will love you each equally, but you will receive a bit more love than the others. He held his hand being hit, mostly a natural reflex from his former teammate Sakura hitting him so often. Hopefully this would work to appease the ever-bossy girlfriend. Good. So when are you going to ask me to marry you? Ino smiled, pleased that she made her point that she should get special attention. Naruto on the other hand side just had to make sure Ino got to be his first wife, if he knew what was good for him. The news didn't take long to circulate amongst the kunoichi who knew Naruto well, and needless to say it was enough to pique their interests. And they were trying to fork into the Hokage's office to see if it was in fact true. Many of them thought that Naruto was completely off the market, since they could see all the signs considering he was spending time with Ino. Enough. As if Tsunade, the Godime Hokage, shouting wasn't enough, she slammed her fist on her desk, almost shoving it through the floor. This was more than enough women to calm down. Yes, it is true, Naruto is being required to rebuild his clan, but that doesn't mean you swarm him like love-starved fangirls. Naruto is like the wind, why him do anything? And you will not intimidate him via a certain cage. At this a certain Suna Kunoichi muttered. Outside the office Jiraiya was eavesdropping and rubbing his hands together, getting many ideas for his next novel. This was going to result in great novel, more than likely great. A few hours had passed, and Naruto had escorted Ino home. If it's one thing he learned from his makeshift family over the years is to be a gentleman. Tsunade after drilled head since she knew Jiraiya would be the worst influence. They stood in front of Ino's home. Ino was practically glowing with happiness. It was a known fact she liked a GU control. Thank you for dinner, Naruto-kun. She smiled happily as she wrapped her arms around his neck. I should give you a reward. Just as Ino was about to kiss Naruto, just as their lips were about to touch, the door of her house swung open, and Inoichi rushed out. Aha! I caught you two red-handed. I knew you were dating. Inoichi shouted in a very protective manner as he pointed at Ino and Naruto. Ino's face was simply red, with a mixture of anger and embarrassment. She couldn't believe her father and his overprotectiveness. Naruto simple sighed softly when his twitched just before a vein popped out of her forehead. Ooh, Dad, you are such a moment killer. And we know you know because we saw you following us. Exclamation mark quote. Naruto could only pray for a miracle in this situation, watching his girlfriend argue with her father. Excuse me. He hoped he could get a word in edgewise this time at Nev when Ino argued with Sakura. And in unison Ino and Inoichi bellowed, How long have you two been here? Exclamation mark quote. A vein was popping out of her forehead in embarrassment that members of her former team had overheard her. This was going to complicate things for her if they wanted, since neither of them was in the least cunning. I and my adorable student shall help you become the bride of Naruto. Guy gave her a thumbs up, and his teeth sparkled as he went into his good guy pose. This was Full, who copied the same actions. Tenten could only give them a deadpan expression. This was rather embarrassing to watch. "Reet," was all she could say as her right eye twitched. It was sometime after the village heard Inoichi's scream that Naruto finally got home. He walked through the door and saw the stern look of Zabuza fall upon him. He gulped, knew he was in for a lecture. Haku was nowhere to be seen. She was probably out at the moment. "Boy, sit down. It's time you and I have a little talk." Zabuza motioned for Naruto to sit at the table. Naruto sat down quietly and remembered back when he faced Zabuza and Haku, back when they were Kurigakure missing Nin. Okay, here's where I explain why Zabuzas and Haku are alive. Flashback. Naruto's growled angrily as he charged at Haku, prepared to kill who he thought was a guy. As the mask fell off, Naruto slowed when he saw the face. Naruto couldn't go th. He quickly clenched his fist to knock Haku out. In all honesty, Naruto was still too kind for the world of the shinobi. "I won't kill you. You were deliberately missing." He caught Haku as she fell forward unconscious. In that moment, Naruto felt something that confirmed that Haku was in fact a girl. Of course, across the bridge, the fight B copy ninja and the demon of the mist raged on. Kakashi moved through a flurry of hand seals and ran forward, unleashing Reikiri. Zabuza quickly swung his sword forward, him a moment's reprieve as Reikiri only destroyed the sword. A few shards of the blade flew into Zabuza's body, wounding him. This was enough to ensure he wouldn't be anymore. Just then Naruto collapsed from using up too much chakra. The next thing he knew, he was waking up in a room, looking around quietly. He sat up quickly and poi when he saw Zabuza and Haku. What are they doing here? Aren't they our enemies? He was worried something bad was going to happen to him. Relax, Naruto. They're on our side, and they will be coming with us to Konohagakure. Kakashi's cool, collected voice rang out as he leaned in the doorway. He knew it would minutes to register with Naruto. Naruto stared blankly for a moment. It slowly registered that the two were on their side and coming back with them to Konohagakure. It was sometime on their trip back that someone asked why Haku was wearing a dress. "That's because," Zabuza began, only to be interrupted by Haku. "Because I'm a girl," Haku finished the sentence for her sensei. Of course, this caused some jealousy to Sakura because of the fact Haku was much prettier. Of course, it didn't help to hear it come from Naruto. "Good to know, Haku-chan. Because you're prettier than Sakura," smiled his foxy grin when he said this, but soon had a fist hit him on the top of the head. At the Hokage's office after their trip had ended, they had explained everything, including Zabuza and Haku's wish to join the Leaf. "I will allow this on one condition, Zabuza Momoichi." Sarutobi spoke softly as he stroked his beard, waiting for a response. "And that would be?" Zabuza responded calmly. He expected it to be some suicidal mission. "You must become Naruto's legal guardian." Zabuza, the infamous demon of the mist, was shocked to hear this. Sarutobi then continued as he took a drag on his pipe. "Nar more structured life. He's lived alone all his life. Now what I am about to tell you does not leave this room. It is an S-ranked village secret." Zabuza nodded to the condition. He may not have been the most caring man, but he did his part for Haku. He could only imagine if this kid had a bloodline limit that caused shunned as well. 12 years ago, this village was attacked by the Kyuubi no Kitsune, and my successor, the Yondaime Hokage, Arashi Uzumaki, made the one sacrifice he could for the Sack village. He sealed the Kyuubi inside his newborn son. He had hoped that Naruto would be regarded as a hero, but the villagers only saw a demon. As you can imagine, life. The council overruled my wish to tell Naruto who his father is, so Naruto has no idea who his father is. Zabuza took a moment to absorb all the information, and looked at Sarutobi calmly. I will be his guardian, I'm the demon of the mist, yet he is only called a demon because sealed inside himself. I can see he will be a great ninja, but he needs to learn to control his emotions more. Sarutobi smiled. He was glad to hear this, it would help make Naruto the hero Arashi wanted him to be. End flashback. For 7 years I have been your legal guardian, but now you're old enough to take care of yourself. But still you are still a moron at times. What I want to talk to you Zabuza began, even after all these years he still wore the mask over his face. What about her Zabuza-san? Zabuza took a deep breath and sighed. He had grown to consider Haku like a daughter, and what he was about to say was really hard. I know about what the Hokage wishes of you, and I have seen how you and Haku have grown close over the years. And I had intimidated you into not starting a relations, but if you break her heart I will destroy you. At this Naruto gulped. He had both respect and fear for Zabuza, and he would never intentionally hurt Haku. He just quickly nodded his head. He didn't want to make Zabuza. I can tell Haku loves you very much Naruto. So, you better consider her as one of your other wives because she deserves happiness too. Naruto's eye twitched. This was getting really weird. When did I become Sasuke? He calmly thought to himself as he scratched his cheek for a moment. Don't worry Zabuza, be sure to consider Haku-chan. At hearing this Zabuza nodded. Okay, you can go to bed now. Remember you hurt Haku and I will break you. Zabuza quickly looked at Naruto with killing intent to back up the threat. Naruto woke up the next morning. This of course was powering up form of Naruto. No matter how energetic he was, when he woke up he was a bit on the grumpy side. He teeth, and when he finished he found a letter attached to a kunai. It's too early for death threats he thought to himself as he read the note attached to it. He read the note was hoping things would calm down soon. Dear Naruto, meet me at Ichiraku Ramen for lunch. If you don't show up I will track you down and bring you there myself. Love, the desert flower, even I can figure this out. It's from Tamari. He rubbed his temples lightly. It was safe to say today would be another interesting day. After he finished brushing his teeth back to the breakfast table and yawned for a moment. He then saw a bowl of ramen in front of him, piping hot. Hen then looked up and saw Haku smiling politely at him. Allowed him to eat ramen constantly, not that it would kill him to eat something else, he just thought it would. This should perk you up. Naruto just muttered a thanks, and began to eat quietly. He was pondering how he would survive this mission. He was certain that this enemy was beyond his means to no fury like love-crazed Kunoichi. Why, oh why did I have to become the target of every love-starved Kunoichi? Single quote. Naruto thought to himself as he ate. He also knew there the village that wasn't a ninja but was in love with him. Sadly he would have to see her while he was at lunch with Tamari. His face paled when he realized Haku was staring dreamily. Oh that's right, Ba-chan said I have to revive my clan. He continued his train of thoughts as he ate his meal. Angrily, which caused Naruto shrink back a little. What is it? Quote. Naruto only sighed and took a breath. He then decided on a diss track that pointed to the roof of Ino's house and shouted loudly, Ero Senin! Quote. And when the two looked to see, he grabbed Ino and led her off before Inoichi knew what hapsek. I don't see Jiraiya-sama. Inoichi turned only to notice Naruto and Ino were missing. His eye twitched as he only had a deadpan expression on his face. Naruto, you better bring my daughter back this instant! Quote. Inoichi shook his fist, being ever the protective parent. Of course nearby a famous copy ninja looked book for a moment, smiling under his mask, recognizing that as the sound of Naruto up to something. Naruto-kun, why did you drag me off like that? Before Ino could complain anymore she found herself being kissed by Naruto. She could only blush for the moment, not that to happen. Fortunately for Naruto it shut her up for a moment. He then slipped a ring onto one of her fingers and gave her his famous grin. Not exactly the way I want, but will you marry me? Naruto half expected her to say something over the top and act hyperactive. It surprised him to see her looking tear-eyed as she wrapped him hugging him tightly. Of course I will. Why wouldn't I? Someone needs to be at your side given what Hokage-sama wants of you. Ino said with her special Y smirk. Her confidence is what about her, that and the fact she never hit him over the head for small stuff. Now let's go inform my dad of the news before he gets any angrier. Ino then pulled Naruto of once back at the front of Ino's house. Ino was smiling brightly. Guess what, Dad? Ino began. 5 minutes later, it could be sworn that everyone in the village heard Inoichi yell in shock as he shouted one word only. What? Naruto just stared blankly as he looked at his future father-in-law was petrified with shock. Ino muttered and rubbed her temples in disbelief of her father's reaction. You never expected me to get engaged. Ino sighed and shot the look at Naruto, causing him to petrify immediately. Tamari paced around the room she was staying in, her fists clenched tight. She had to formulate the best way to gain Naruto's affection without involving Gaara, who was best friend. She didn't have to involve Gaara, she just needed a good way to get Naruto alone. Now it was no secret she had given up on Shikamaru long ago when she was both a coward, and a lazy coward because he was deathly afraid of Gaara, and everyone knew he just wanted to lie around staring at clouds. Naruto Uzumaki, the last eligible bachelor of Konohagakure. I will find a way to get you to fall for me. Now I just need an idea. She walked to the window and looked out and saw her salvation, Ichiraku ramen. A sly smirk tugged at the corners of the Desert Rose's mouth. That was the answer. Naruto inhaled the stuff. They did say the easiest way to a man's heart is through the stomach. Naruto Uzumaki, your affection shall be mine, once I buy you lunch. I know it's short here, but when you see her next in this chapter it shall be more involved. Elsewhere, a certain weapons mistress was contemplating her best method for gaining the affection of Naruto. She had known him for a great while. She knew he was in her. She also knew she was more fortunate than him. She remembered when the orphanage threw him out like he was some kind of animal. All because of something you couldn't control, Naruto-kun. She had found that she was growing fonder of Naruto over the years since he consoled her when Neji flat out rejected her. She also realized that she had fallen in love with before she could tell him the chance was gone. She wouldn't interfere with Naruto's happiness, but now was her chance. But this would require a good idea of how to Naruto. I must show Naruto how much I care for him. She had a fierce look of determination in her eyes as she uttered that sentence. And she began to formulate her plans for the next day in showing Naruto that she cares. The springtime of youth. Tenten. We will help you achieve this wish. Tenten turned slower, her eye twitching as she saw her former sensei and former teammate posing in her living room. Browse just in community forum Beta's story say we use cookies. By using our services, you acknowledge that you have read and, Kit, it won't be all that bad. You revive your clan, and you get to live everyman's dream. The Kyuubi said from behind the bars of its prison as Naruto front of it. Naruto probably chose, have you been talking to the Arrow Sennin, you stupid furball? What's the worst that can happen? Your loudmouth fiancé and the girl with the giant forehead start arguing. It's actually Entertai, Naruto replied, not looking too pleased that Kyuubi was also finding enjoyment in this. Ning, if you think about, could have sworn he saw the Kyuubi smirk. At least he thought the Kyuubi was smirking. It was really hard to tell if it was. I'm not too keen on being punched by an Insan medic nin. Not like it will kill you, Kit. Naruto glared and grumbled as usual. Why was it that most of the people he knew seemed to find enjoyment in this? You're enjoying this, or? Naruto raised his eyebrow at the Kyuubi's enjoyment of his plight. Of course I am, Kit. You are suffering, but you won't be killed by it. The Kyuubi once again looked as if it were smiling. Naruto just grumbled about the damn Q thorn in his side yet again. Back in reality, only a matter of seconds had passed. He then gave her his trademark foxy grin after finishing the ramen. He smiled happily as he was now awake from his favorite meal. Oh, what do with his day until lunch? I could train, but then again I would lose track of time and make Tamari angry. He needed to find something to keep himself occupied for morning, maybe find a bigger house to live in. Haku-chan, I'm going to go out for a while today, probably talk to Ba-chan and see if she can help me find a place. I really should get a bigger house, he calmly said as his room. Once Naruto was in his room, Haku looked disappointed at the thought of Naruto moving away from her. She never thought the day would come when he would go. Haku had grown attached to Naruto. She would have to make her move before her window of opportunity was gone. She didn't even have a chance as an orange and Gree passed her and out the door. Naruto, I will track you down later. I'm still an Oinin. I will track you down and have my chance before it's too late. Naruto stealthily entered Hokage Tower. He needed to speak to Tsunade without running into Sakura or Shizune. Just as he was about to make it into Tsunade's office, he slowly turned to see Shizune looking sternly at him. He forced a smile, afraid she would attack him like Sakura would. Shizune, age 25, the strengths and weak being a possible bride in Naruto's book were simple. She was nauseatingly way too cute. Naruto, were you going to just barge into Tsunade-sama's office without permission? She crossed her arms over her chest as she walked over to Naruto slowly. Hey, I just needed to ask Ba-chan if she knows of a bigger house I could move into. He raised his hands up, obviously afraid of Shizune. The cute ones were always deadly. Now Naruto-kun, why are you so afraid of me? Is it because you're now the most sought-after ninja in Konohagakure, after you seem to have really grown into your body? Crossed her face as she approached Naruto. And as if by some miracle of luck, the doors to Tsunade's office opened. Get in here, brat, Tsunade yelled as she pulled Naruto into her office, closing the doors quickly. He sighed in relief. He didn't need to have a girl coming onto him this early morning. Thank you, Tsunade-sama. Naruto decided to avoid making Tsunade angry at him. It never ended well when he did. She raised an eyebrow at his sudden politeness. This Naruto. Who are you? And what have you done with Naruto? She cracked her knuckles and prepared to flick his forehead. Politeness didn't fit the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki, it was peck unnatural. It was as unnatural as the time they slipped Shikamaru some caffeine pills and he was more hyper than Naruto. What do you want, Naruto? Tsunade was quick to figure out that Naruto probably came to get a favor. And she had a good idea what it was. It was going to be one of though everything makes as much sense as the strange world that Jiraiya lived in. Well, you see, Tsunade Ba-chan, I need to see about getting a bigger house, since I have to marry so many women, and the space would be good, especially for my mental health, that is. Where I live is too small, and I doubt Ino likes me living with a girl prettier than her. Naruto kept his guard up in case Tsunade flicked his forehead. Tsunade smiled, and walked to her desk, pulling out a folder. She set out on the table open. It detailed the Uzumaki compound, which no one lived in anymore. This is where you will be living. It belonged to your father, the Yondaime, but the council didn't want you, as they so kindly put it, tainting it, so they wouldn't let you live. To say they are all gone. Funny how old age catches up to them. Tsunade smiled. She then threw a kunai into the wall, causing Jiraiya to reveal himself. Make yourself use and take Naruto there. It was rather shameful in her book that Jiraiya was watching the happenings in the village like some sick twisted man. Wait, that's typical of Jiraiya, usually outside a bathhouse. Yes, Tsunade. Sheesh, you sure know how to give a man a heart attack. When Tsunade and Naruto just gave him the deadpan expression, he sighed. Right, let's go, brat. Okay, here it is, brat. Jiraiya simply smirked as Naruto's jaw hung agape. The size was incredible. It made the Hyuga compound look like his first apartment. He had no was that powerful. Then again, his father was called the Yellow Flash. This should be big enough. I'll have to show Ino, but I won't move in until next week, I think. Naruto smiled as he rubbed the back of his head. it was going to be an edge, then realized that he had to be at Ichiraku Ramen soon. He swallowed hard as he thought of what Tamari might do if he was late. Crap. I gotta go. Tamari will kill me. Naruto pulled on his hair as he rushed off, towards Ichiraku, leaving a smirking Jiraiya at the compound. This should be worth at least one whole chapter. Jiraiya then disappeared in a blur, heading in the same direction to watch Naruto on a date with Sunagaku's most ban. Rejoice, here is what you've been waiting for. Naruto's date with Tamari, with a garnish of Naru Ayame and joy. Naruto panted as he reached the ramen stand with only 5 minutes to spare. He hoped he was on time because Tamari wasn't someone that made idle threats. He caught just in time as Tamari walked alongside of him and latched onto his arm. Now it wasn't a shock to anyone that Tamari had it going on. But still Naruto had to blush, and fr like he could turn her down. Tamari was known to get what she wants. Hello Naruto-kun. I see you got my message, good. Otherwise I would have had Gaara convince you to go out with me. It was somewhat disturbing to the spiky-haired sweetly Tamari made it sound. Order whatever you want Naruto-kun, it's my treat. Are you sure Tamari-chan? I mean I can eat a lot. He then pointed to the stand which displayed a portrait of him that said, "Number 1 customer," below it. Tamari nodded softly and Naruto to the stand and gave him a look that said, "Sit." He complied, not wanting her to hit him over the head with her fan. He didn't need a headache today, but he knew up with one. Welcome Naruto-kun. Ayame greeted them cheerfully, though she blushed slightly. This of course caused Tamari to wonder why Naruto ate ramen so often. Was it because the company of this girl? Hello Ayame-chan. Hello Tsuki-san. Naruto chimed. He had gone a whole day without Ichiraku ramen. He felt like he was going cold turkey. What'll you have Naruto? Your usual 2 of everything. Tsuki knew Naruto loved ramen, but frankly he had no idea where he put it all. Tsuki then noticed his daw at Naruto like a love-struck school girl. He could only smile at this. No, I think I will eat light today. Naruto smiled brightly, then looked over at Tamari. He then began to subconsciously go over what not to do when out on a date, especially Gaara's sister. So, I'll just have 4 bowls of miso pork ramen. He just kept his usual grin. He calls that eating light. I wonder what he calls a large meal. Tamari raised her eyebrow delicately at Naruto's odd idea of a light meal. I'll just have 1 bowl of miso s. When the food was set before them, Naruto smiled. He had always loved ramen since he was a child. He smiled and picked up his chopsticks and smiled happily. Itadakimasu. He called out loudly as he broke the chopsticks apart, and began to eat. Tamari had followed suit. She was amazed to see Naruto eating with manners. A civilized person is even more attractive. Tamari thought to herself as a sly smile crossed her face. You know, Naruto, I never really thanked you for helping Gaara come to his senses. Tamari smiled sweetly as she looked at Naruto. I didn't do that much. Naruto just scratched his cheek quietly. He had become less wise over the years. It didn't hurt that Zabuza knocked him down a peg quite often. Wonder was his life going to be a living hell later on from all these strong women who were interested in him. Naruto is with Tamari too. He hasn't even been engaged to Ino for 24 hours yet. How troublesome, Shikamaru said as he walked by with his son, Shikataro. Then Aga she always wanted. I was never energetic enough, and I was too afraid of her brother. Shikamaru was off in his own thoughts again. Man, what a drag. I would hate to they have. And like that he was on his way. That is before Tamari hurt him for that comment about horrible children. Once they were done, and Tamari had paid for the meal, realizing that he ate light out of consideration for her. This must be the reason why all the girls were crazy about. Course knew that Naruto still had a demon sealed inside of him, so he had a higher metabolism rate. Tamari noticed Naruto was starting to slink away and quickly grabbed vice-like grip. Not so fast Naruto Uzumaki. Our date isn't over just yet. She then dragged Naruto off. Needless to say, Naruto had a look of dismay on his face. And don't think of using do will kill me, excuse. With that, she dragged him off. Off to the side, a certain novelist was writing what had transpired down. Good, good. My next novel, Ika Ika Engagements, shall be a bestseller. He smiled broadly and keeping a safe distance. Yes, it was true, the Ero Senin had decided to go in a new direction. Romance novels. He had heard women like that sort of thing. Hours later, Naruto found himself sitting with Tamari on top of the Hokage monument, though at first he was reluctant. He was enjoying this. He saw Tamari wasn't so hoary bossy, then again most of the women he knew were bossy. You know, Naruto-kun, I'm not as vicious as Shikamaru made me out to be. It's just mostly just living with a brother who was a bit crazy. She smiled softly as she rested his shoulder. And I don't mean Kankuro. I knew you meant Gaara. Does he at least get some sleep? I think he needed a nap. Naruto smiled softly before Tamari jabbed him in the ribs. I'm kidding. You're a bad comedian, you better stick to being a ninja, she said with a deadpan look on her face. Perfect. Just have to wait till he's in love with me. Once again the besmirked. You will have to take me out again, Naruto-kun. By the way, Gaara is coming to the village soon. Tamari smirked as all the blood left Naruto's face. It was an X reaction. It's getting pretty late, Tamari began as she looked at Naruto. She looked him dead in the eyes, her they looked green, eyes locking with his lapis lazuli like. He leaned forward and kissed him softly on the lips. The knuckle-headed blonde didn't fight back any either. His face turned the most interesting shade of red though. Humana. Gaara is going to kill me. He then got jabbed in the ribs again, and just chuckled. He isn't going to kill you. Now escort me home, future Rokudime Hokage. She smirked as Naruto nodded. Naruto first stood to his feet and then helped her up, smiling. Normally does. Much better. I prefer that grin on your face, fox boy. And with that they walked off, heading to where Tamari was staying. After dropping Tamari off at the apartment she was staying in, he walked home. He caught a glimpse of Rock Lee and Guy Sensei acting like they always do. Like they were or needed to down the dosage on their psychiatric medications. Either way, it was very unusual, yet normal behavior for them. Naruto walked through the door of his H1, hope that his day wasn't going to get any crazier. Sadly, no dice. He walked in to see Hiashi and Hinata Hyuga in his living room. What kind of insanity is going on? Naruto, I've been meaning to speak with you. Hiashi's cold voice rang out, and like most Hyuga, he acted like he had the scroll of forbidden jutsu shoved up his rear. Naan sat down across from the Hyugas. This was just going to be fun. Yes, what is it? Naruto said with an exhausted tone to his voice. He glanced at Hinata and noticed she was blushing as usual. She had become quite the catch over the ye. Amazingly, she was still single. I have a proposition that will benefit your clan. Before the birth of you, or Hinata even. I and your father Arashi made an arrangement. And that was for his firstborn son, firstborn daughter. It should also serve to make the Uzumaki clan stronger, so in 2 weeks you shall wed Hinata. It was impossible to see if this was joke or if he was IIGG get to marry Naruto-kun. The Hyuga heiress managed to stutter out before blushing bright red and fainting onto the floor. Hiashi's eye twitched. Embarrassing. She still does that, huh? Naruto asked as he looked at an unconscious yet smiling happily Hinata. I'm afraid so. I hope she gets over it. We don't need to have that happen at the ceremony. Hiashi's eye was still twitching in disbelief. Author's note. Phew. It was a long write this time. Okay, just so you guys know, Naruto and Tamari aren't yet together, can't just rush it. But, in the next chapter, more you haven't guessed it. Hinata. I think I have a good idea of the harem as well. So in no particular order, for me to answer some of your questions. Yugito is the host of the Nibi no Neko. Tsunade won't be in the harem. She looks young but she's pushing 60. Just a legend here. Speech. thinking, Kyuubi, in herself, should we wake her up? So she knows she didn't just dream it. Naruto asked as he helped pick Hinata up off the floor. We probably should. Hiyashi sighed and pulled out a bottle of smelling salts to bring his unusual daughter back to consciousness. 2-san. Had a really ww wonderful dream that us said I was going to marry Naruto K-kun. She fidgeted quietly as she said that. She then looked at Naruto. It wasn't a doctor dream. And with that Hinata fainted again. In unison Hiyashi, Haku, and Naruto all groaned. I simply hope she doesn't do this at the wedding. It would be a bit trifling if that happened. Hiyashi commented as he once again used some smelling salts to bring his consciousness. Needless to say, after 25 minutes, Hinata had gotten used to the shock. It was amazing that it was so shocking that Hinata had fainted at least 9 times. It wasn't shocking to the others, but to Hinata it must have been a big shock. Almost everyone knew she was infatuated with the hidden genius of the Hidden Leaf Village. As I was saying, in 2 weeks you Naruto Uzumaki shall wed my eldest daughter Hinata, of the Hyuga clan. Also be sure to wear something formal. Such as your clan suits. Hiyashi made it clear that he didn't want this to be some mockery of the Hyuga clan. He then noticed his daughter didn't faint this time and sighed with relief. Why 2 weeks? Naruto thought that was quite odd. Then at the back of his head the image of Ino came to view. Inoichi bargained with you, didn't he? Hiyashi nodded softly. Never. Challenge a doting father. So scary. This was the only thought that stuck in his head. He made it clear Ino shall have her wedding first. He clear. Him and his wife. Alright, I'll be sure to remember in 2 weeks. You can count on me to remember that. Naruto then gave his trademark pending foxy grin. Then dreadful thoughts filled. Formal wear. I don't own anything formal. And as I remember, guys usually have to dress formal for their wedding or their wife won't let them live it down. Exclamation mark single quote. After that twitched, this wasn't good. Okay then, we shall leave. We will see you in 2 weeks. Hiyashi stood and walked to the door. I will be waiting outside Hinata. This couldn't be. Was Hiyashi actually tree good father, and make Hinata happy? WW will SSCUWW when we get married, A and P probably when you marry Ino, the Hyuga heiress managed to stutter out, as she fidgeted with looking off to the side. Okay. Have a nice evening Hinata-chan. He then hugged her tightly. He was starting to see the point the arrow senin and the furball made about every man's dream. They remembered that there would be arguing. He of course returned to attention hoping Hinata wouldn't faint. She had done this before when he hugged her. Thank you, Naruto-kun. I'll look forward to ORW wedding, the Hyuga heiress once again stammered. She then slipped out of Naruto's arms reluctantly. Walked out the door. Naruto flopped onto the couch and sighed in an exhausted manner. No more affection for me today. Naruto closed his eyes and got comfortable. He sensed a shadow paw and opened an eye to see Haku leaning over him with a delicate smile on her face. You don't get a say, Naruto-kun. Zabuza-san is on a mission, which means you will spend the evening with me. Haku smiled kindly and helped Naruto up. This might be to spend some time with Naruto-kun. I need to show him that I am still fond of him. She then led Naruto to the dinner table. Too tired, Naruto managed to mutter. Before he could mutter anymore, some food was shoved into his mouth. Delicious food. That was all it took to get Naruto to wake the power of Haku's cooking. Too tired for something I made just for you. Haku then gave a smirk since she knew Naruto loved her cooking. She set a large bowl of ramen in front of Naruto. This ram par with Ichiraku ramen. That's just the appetizer, Naruto-kun. How much food did you cook for me? Naruto's stomach then growled, or should it be said that it roared. Hey, looks like I'm still hungry. He scratched his cheek, embarrassed by this roaring of his stomach. I know you ate light to make it easier on Tamari, so I cooked you dinner figuring you must be hungry. She smiled as she reached into the oven and pulled out some egg wontons. Thanks for the recipe Tenten, too bad Tamari doesn't know the best way is to cook for Naruto. Haku smiled as she thought quietly while checking the main. Su looked to see Naruto was happily eating the ramen. She then giggled when she saw there were Naruto kamaboko fish cakes on one of his cheeks. What? Naruto had paused his inhaling of noodles when he heard Haku giggling. He was oblivious that there were some fish cakes of his namesake on his face. There is a kamaboko on your cheek, Naruto-kun, she managed to say between giggles. This, in all honesty, was what Haku admired about Naruto most, his childlike purity. Over and took a napkin and wiped his face and simply stared into his eyes. This was picturesque moment. Naruto, you really have changed my life. I know about so many because of you. She then blushed deep crimson and backed up to return to her attention to the main course. She quickly set the wok on the table, then set a plate with egg rolls on it between the two of them and a bowl with fried rice on the table. An hour later, cuz I don't feel like going over the meal anymore. After having in fact devoured the large meal, the two had relegated themselves to sitting on the couch peacefully. The two were looking around trying to find some way to end conversation. It was like they had a moment for something and it was long gone now. Naruto for one was oddly quiet. Naruto then leaned over and kissed Haku's cheek. He saw her face turn as red as a tomato. His smile then turned into a chuckle. You think that's funny, do you? Haku huffed as she jabbed Naruto with her elbow. The two had such trouble figuring out what to do since Zabuza was on a mission. It was without Zabuza being a strict authoritarian, and not allowing the two to be alone. One would think that Zabuza took the mission to make it possible for the two to get close. Someone had to break the silence. He grinned in his special way. He began to tickle Haku as he broke into laughter. Yes, it is. And it's ending the awkward silence between us, was his reply as he continued to tickle Haku. He then suddenly stopped tickling her and looked at her. He took a face and blushed softly. You're beautiful, Haku-chan, he called softly as he looked deeply into her eyes. Arigato, Naruto-kun. She blushed softly. She gazed affectionately up at Naruto, and smiled happily. She then wrapped her arms around Naruto's neck. She was blushing crimson. She had never thought this situation would happen. Naruto slowly leaned closer and kissed her softly. His right hand rested softly on her cheek. His eyes slowly drifted closed as he kissed her affectionately, his other hand raw long dark hair. Naruto slowly broke away from the kiss and simply blushed. His thoughts were on what had just happened. He had kissed Haku, a girl he had been extreme 7 years. Did Zabuza count on this to happen? No, it couldn't be that simple. Naruto stood to his feet and helped Haku to her feet, and as she got to her feet she fell for Naruto's chest. Haku simply blushed deep red as she rested her head against Naruto's chest. She had imagined a situation like this would happen someday, but not like this. Naruto-kun, confession to make. Haku blushed deeply. She was about to make a bold leap forward. I'm in love with you. Her blush deepened after her admission. I love you too, Haku-chan. Naruto wrapped his arms around Haku slowly. He simply just held her close. It was a known fact that Naruto had a big heart. He was more than having love for all these women that seemed to love him. Naruto sat down on the couch with Haku. After a few minutes he had noticed Haku had fallen asleep. Sleep well, angel. He spoke softly so as not to wake her, and lightly placed a kiss on her forehead. He closed his eyes and rested his head lightly against hers as he too slipped into SLE. The next morning, at 7 a.m. There was a pounding at the door of the home. Naruto of course was a sound sleeper, so he didn't hear anything. Haku on the other hand did and woke from her serene walked to the door. She opened it up just a crack. She then opened the door when she saw it was Ino. Good morning, Ino. I trust you are here to see Naruto. Since my parents are planning the wedding, we need to get Naruto some formal clothes, and get invitations sent out. So we need to get started today. Ino Smil. Many people had often compared the two noisy blondes as being perfect for each other, just based on their similar personalities. Only difference Ino like to eat healthier tea Naruto. Naruto is sleeping but I know how to wake him up. Haku smiled sweetly as she went to the kitchen and heated up the broth for her ramen from the night before. She with a bowl of ramen, and waited as Naruto slowly woke up. Figures he would wake up from the smell of that stuff. Ino had an exasperated look on her face as she watched Naruto wake up and begin eating the bowl of ramen. On done, Ino took the bowl, handed it over to Haku, and dragged Naruto out of the apartment by the collar of his jumpsuit. Naruto quickly used Kage Bunshin no Jutsu to clone, which ran over and kissed Haku on the cheek and hugged her tightly. Once Haku smiled happily, it disappeared into a poof of smoke. He was more than thankful that technique, since it was going to come in handy from the point on. 5 minutes later at the Yamanaka's. Okay, Naruto, you wait here with my dad while we pick out flowers for floral arrangements. Ino then disappeared into the back with her mother, leaving Naruto and Inoichi. Two men just blinked since it seemed pretty pointless. Then why did you make us come here? Both men shouted out in unison since it was rather weird. Hey Naruto, I know you're good with Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Inoichi began as he looked at his future son-in-law. And, Naruto replied as he looked at Inoichi with caution, since he knew they would end up getting in trouble if Ino or her mother found out what they were up to. Could you create a few clones and get us some food and coffee? It's 7 in the morning, we need breakfast. Inoichi wasn't joking either as he and Naruto both yawned. Naruto could only grin before creating 3 clones, which then stealthily ran out the door. Within 15 minutes the clones return with some cappuccinos and some pastry. Going to have your hands full with Ino, she's just like a princess Naruto, but I gather you know that already. I am, she doesn't let me take her to Ichiraku ever. She says that Ayame-chan is too pretty for her to trust to be around me. Naruto simply sweat dropped when he finished sentence. It begins. Inoichi quipped, knowing all the signs from years of marriage. He knew all the signs and could give this boy some pointers. You do know whenever a woman reassure her that she's beautiful, right? Yet given your upcoming situation you will have to find ways to reassure each one that they are beautiful in individual ways. Naruto nodded his head in agreement. You could say that Ino was what they call the hot chick, beautiful, while Ayame was the girl next door, beautiful. I do know that one more person tells me I'm living every man's dream, I'm going to hurt them. Let me guess, Jiraiya-sama told you that? Inoichi's eyes rolled at the thought, then he figured it was typical thinking of the perverted Sanin. It was the typical thinking, oh writes Ika Ika Paradise. Of course Inoichi's wife doesn't know that he reads that book. So how long do you think it's going to take them to pick out flowers and choose arrangements? Naruto asked nonchalantly as he looked around, making sure he had an it and bouquets to use if he made a wife angry. They actually have a I'm sorry I confused your birthday with a different wife's bouquet. Naruto smirked some, knowing he a few times. 3 hours later. Okay, sorry it took so long. We get all the flowers picked out and just the right arrangements planned. Now we go find a place to have a wedding. Get Naruto something, I'm not going to marry you while you wear an orange jumpsuit. And then find caterers for the reception. No Ichiraku Naruto. Ino and her mother then dragged Naruto out of shop, making sure the door was locked as they left to find a place for the wedding to be held. 3 in the afternoon. Tsunade-sama, were here because you knew Naruto's father and may know a thing or two about the Uzumaki clan, and we can't find Jiraiya-sama. Ino started as she lay on Naruto's arm. It had been a trying day. They finally found a place to have the wedding. They were now on the task of finding Naruto something formal to wear. Well, Arashi's clan robes might not fit Naruto, so you will probably need to find someone to replicate them. Now let's see. Tsunade pulled out a kunai and threw it at the Jiraiya to reveal himself. How do you keep finding me, you old hag? Jiraiya shook his fist in anger, mostly since the kunai hit the wall uncomfortable close to his groin. Let's go and make yourself useful and make Naruto some formal clothes with his clan seal on the back. Call me an old hag again and I will aim higher next time. Tsunade another kunai as she watched Jiraiya cautiously. Fine, fine, sheesh, come on brat. Jiraiya shouted as he dragged Naruto out of the office. This left Ino, alone with Tsunade, Shizune, and Sakura. Ino pig, you know I will make sure Naruto-kun marries me too. Sakura didn't miss a beat at trying to stir up trouble with her rival. I didn't know my fiancé liked girls' wi foreheads. Ino retorted as she stood to her feet and the two eternal rivals glared at each other. Their animosity for one another seemed to materialize as if while they seemed as if lightning struck. I saw him first, piggy. Sakura responded as she cracked her knuckles. The two were about to throw down right there and right now. While you are fighting, I'm going to kun. Shizune calmly and cheerfully said as she walked past the two. She had a sly smirk across her face as she was headed for the door. Oh no you don't. The two grabbed hold of Shizune's shoulders and dragged her back. Tsunade's eye twitched as the three girls began to bicker right in front of her. Shish angrily and slammed her fist down on her desk much harder than before. This sent the desk flying down to the floor below. The desk landed on top of Guy's head and split in. Amazing. Guy-sensei, your head is so well trained that nothing can harm you if it hits you on the head. Exclamation mark. I must also train to have as hard of a head as you. Rock Lee W say as he looked at Guy with admiration. This is my Kekkei Genkei. Lee, head of iron. Guy then went into his good guy pose, his teeth sparkling as he posed. Is that so, Guy? I thought it was just that your skull is really thick. Besides, you don't have a Kekkei Genkei, Kakashi quipped as he looked up from his book. This caused twitch. Why must you be so hip, Kakashi? Guy thought as he became quite frazzled from Kakashi's sarcasm. The four women upstairs could only twitch in shock that Guy's head was so thick that nothing could hurt him if it hit him on the head. It was just so odd, and unusual. After was over, the three women were about to start arguing. Don't start again. Tsunade warned them as she cracked her knuckles. There were veins appearing in her for fighting over Naruto. Honestly, don't you girls think Naruto is well capable of loving all of you? He is after all someone that wants to be Hokage, and the Hokage must show entire village as if they were his or her family. The three women nodded, never having seen the angry side of Tsunade. She regarded Naruto as a son, maybe even a grandson. That is, if she wanted to admit she was in FA, wasn't about to admit that. She felt like she was in her 30s, and thanks to a genjutsu she looked it. Now sit down and we can get to the subject at hand. Planning the elsewhere, Naruto stood in the local tailor shop. Jiraiya had managed to put Naruto into a replica of his own clothing. Naruto simply had a few blood veins popping out of his forehead, definitely not amused by this. Are you out of your mind, Ero Sennin? Ino will kill me! Exclamation mark quote. Naruto shouted loudly right into Jiraiya's ear, his eye twitching. Jiraiya street at Naruto, I'm doing you a favor. You should have clothes like this. It causes people to misjudge you. Jiraiya quickly replied, as he continued to glare at his student. I'm married, I'm not performing kabuki. Fine, fine, sheesh. Still take this as a present. You are after all my best student. Well living. And one day you too shall have a student. Hopefully just as annoying as you. I think I aged 50 years because of you. Jiraiya complained with his arms crossed over his chest. An hour later, this is much better. It's comfortable, won't make Ino shout at me, and on top of that it's orange, and black. Naruto was pleased with the new clan robe, or in the case of WB using it for formal wear. There it is, the spitting image of Arashi. Except for the whisker marks. But what do you expect? My number one student is getting married. I'm just so proud of you. And why, one heck of a beauty. Jiraiya was quick to give a dual thumbs up in approval. Naruto could only grin. He didn't care about correcting the Ero Sennin. You know I have to bachelor party now, boy. Jiraiya shouted quite loudly, not caring who heard, getting lecherous thoughts in his head. No strippers. Naruto didn't have the same lecherous thoughts that his sensei had. This of course caused Jiraiya to pout. Not even one stripper. Jiraiya tried to bargain. W student, He of course knew he was going to lose this argument. Not even one. I don't think I really need to worry about seeing women. Naruto quipped. He knew his current rate he was going to be seeing more nudity than most married men in the coming weeks. At the Hokage Tower, let's just assume some of the Junin have clearance to marry people. Tsunade-sama, we just need to find someone to perform the ceremony, Ino began as she tapped her chin in thought of who they could have perform the ceremony. Whoa Hokage-sama. No, that might not be such a good idea. I'm kind of unreliable in this, considering I was once married to that lech Jiraiya. It might be bad luck for you too. Tsunade wa chance joking about Jiraiya, it would explain why she hated him so much. Just then Kakashi had appeared in the room under a poof of smoke. Yo. His typical entrance wa expected. No, you can't be the person who gives the ceremony. You're always late. Sakura quipped quickly. She may not have been exactly the best friend of Ino, especially when involved. Kakashi walked out of the office in defeat. Next to walk in was Guy. Next was quickly yelled, and Guy walked right out while sulking. We may have to have Jiraiya ceremonies, Shizune calmly commented. At hearing this, Tsunade of course paled, thinking about the ceremony that Lech would give. I'll do it. Tsunade quickly called, would do anything to make sure this wedding wouldn't be a complete mockery. Later at Naruto's apartment, Naruto staggered into the apartment where he currently lived and fell onto the floor carrying some bags. Home, sweet home, he climbed back to his feet and went right with the bags of new clothes. As soon as he walked into his room, he dropped the bags in shock. His day just got a whole lot more hectic. His eyes simply twitched. Not once standing in his room was the one person he hadn't expected to run into this day. Hey Tard, I was getting tired of waiting for you to get here. The person called out, full of anger, to Yuya, the most foul-mouthed ninja Naruto knew. She may be part of the leaf now, but still she has no sense of watching her mouth. Not to mention no tact. Why me? Why couldn't she wait till later to track me down? Was the only thought that crossed the number one surprising ninja's mind. You know, asshole, I'm really pissed off you have out on a date yet. And don't give me that you're getting married bullshit. You can still date other girls. She quickly started to chew the blonde out, and blonde side sink wanted to get some sleep. Fine. Let's go for drinks 2 nights from tomorrow. Naruto wasn't sure about dinner since to Yuya's mouth would get them kicked out of the restaurants. Bars didn't seem much, and Naruto was technically not under legal age to drink since in Konoha it started at age 16, the unofficial law was as soon as you could sit at the bar. Okay, see you there, shithead. She then pushed past him after punching him in the arm, not in a playful manner, but in a to Yuya manner, meaning hard. She likes to H, she loves, they say. Once he was sure she was out of the apartment, he flopped onto his bed and groaned. My life is going to be hell. Hopefully the sweet wives will counterbalance the bossy ones, and with that he sighed in discontent and snuggled into his bed. Naruto had finally gotten himself a good night of rest, as would be indicated by the fact it was now 10 in the morning, and he was hanging off the side of his bed. He then edged and hit the floor with a thud, muttering one word, ouch. He then crawled back up into his bed and stared at the ceiling for a moment. He then drifted his attention. He then saw a large banner. Naruto, meet me at Ichiraku Ramen. Anko Mitarashi. Naruto sighed. Another date already. At least he was well rested. He staggered to his feet and got dressed, and staggered to the bathroom to brush his teeth. Upon walking bathroom, his face turned bright red, for what he had seen when he was walking in was a Haku who was drying off after bathing. Oh crap. I'm sorry. He quickly turned right into the wall behind him, knocking himself out. Naruto-kun. Haku pulled a robe on and knelt down beside Naruto. Naruto shortly came to and rubbed his head, and winced some. Itai. He looked over and saw Haku looking at him rather concerned. He sat up and rubbed his head win more. I need to learn to knock. He looked away feeling a bit embarrassed. His face turned bright red at remembering what Haku looked like while she was. It's not like you weren't bound to see me like that, Naruto. Haku spoke softly as she put her arms around Naruto. She smiled softly as she kissed his cheek before head, and Naruto just sat there blushing still, until slight fear washed over him. Anko, now that was a scary woman. Naruto sighed and went to the bathroom to brush his teeth, then he rushed out the door making sure to get to Ichiraku Ramen on time. He skidded to a stop as he reached ramen. He looked left, he looked right, he even looked up, and below. Then out of nowhere someone snuck up and wrapped their arms around him. Naruto-kun, you're late, lucky I'm forgiving today. So if you buy me some dango I will forgive you for being late for our date. And with that Anko began to drag Naruto off by the collar of his shirt, watched this from the ramen stand and giggled. Moments later the two were outside of a place that sold the sweet dumplings that Anko loved oh so very much. It was often compared to Naruto's obsession with ramen. En blinked when he saw all the skewers she had thrown into a tree. Of course it was rather embarrassing since she made a picture of them kissing. Why did you do that? With Naruto's eye twitched some since it was such an odd thing for Anko to do. Not once had Anko been the sweet romantic type. In truth she was more of a creepy examiner. Ah, is Naru-kun embarrassed? How about I give you a kiss to get your mind off of it? Anko smirked in a sadistic manner as she pulled Naruto close. This helped Naruto. This was in fact the same Anko. Naruto quickly was able to use Kawarimi no Jutsu to replace himself with a Naruto plushie. He had seen his fair share of odd things, but Anko was just scary. Anko blinked as she kissed the plushie and looked up to see Naruto trying to make an escape. Oh no you don't, she called out as she bound Naruto snakes. She walked over, looked at Naruto with an unamused look on her face. Now Naru-kun, if you keep running away I'm going to have to take more drastic measures. Used would make even Orochimaru's skin crawl if he were still alive, that is. Fine, you win. Naruto didn't like the tone that Anko used since it was beyond creepy. Creepy meant you had an idea of what they would do. Beyond meant you had no id. Good. Now come on fox boy. Let's get some lunch. Anko was quick to glare at Naruto before he could mention that she just ate several dango. He only paled and let her draw a barbecue restaurant. Apparently there had been a rumor that Naruto and Ayame were fond of each other, and Anko needed reassurance that Naruto's attention would be on he elsewhere. Move it! Exclamation mark. Shikamaru, hurry up! Ino yelled out as she stood in the center of the location for the wedding. She had managed to get mostly everyone she could to help say wedding. Oh man, what a drag, how did she manage to talk me into this? Shikamaru without missing a beat began to complain. He had been stuck with the task of bring flowers. Ino, this isn't what Akamaru is meant for. He isn't some chair delivery dog. Exclamation mark quote. Kiba chimed in as he walked beside his giant dog who was carrying numerous chairs on high. Then Ino turned, her eyes seemed to have changed to something demonic as they were aglow with a red darkness. Ino was going bridezilla on all of them. This is going special day. The day I become Mrs. Naruto Uzumaki. Now you stop complaining or we will have a problem. Exclamation mark. Do we have an understanding? After Kiba and Shikamaru just paled and shrunk away in fear. Got it, boss lady, the two managed to squeak out before returning to their assigned tasks. Hinata giggled. Watch, it was funny to see Ino act so crazy about her wedding. Ino, we simply must get you fitted for your wedding gown. Suddenly came a surprising voice to everyone. It was Sai. Oddly enough no one ever expected him to be so. Did. But that was only because Sai had made comments about Naruto's way too much for normal comfort levels. Ooh, Hinata-chan. We should totally get started adjustments of your mother's wedding gown while we're at it. And when Ino, Hinata, and Sai, the best dressmaker in Konoha, had left, the decoration crew sighed, just be shuddering at the creepiness of Sai. Remember, if Ino isn't happy, no one is happy, so let's finish this setting up. Oh man, what a drag. I don't get how she convinced my W should help, Shikamaru quickly complained as he left to bring some more flowers in. Back on Naruto's date, Naruto was growing more comfortable with this newcomer Anko. It was still strange, it was like Choji eating a salad strange. And Naruto had seen Choji eat a salad bef sure grown up Naru-kun. You're not that same mouthy brat I met at the Chunin exams, which is good because you would be unattractive then. But still loosen up. This is Wake. She then patted him on the shoulder to reassure him that it's okay to be himself, cause she wouldn't bite, at least not that much. Anko was a special kind of lady. She's a special kind of girl, the kind you don't bring home to mama. She's a super freak, super freak, super freaky. Of course Naruto had that song stuck in his head. Okay Anko-chan. Naruto was slightly nervous. Of course one would have to be considering how unusual Anko was. Of course they weren't so different because Naruto w normal. Good. Now eat up. You must be hungry. Anko said with a cheerful look on her face. Naruto began to eat. He was after all quite hungry after having not eaten yet. After they had eaten and paid for their meal, the two were talking down the streets. Naruto was of course telling stories that portrayed him in a heroic light. These stories earned the fox boy a smile from the examiner. Oh stop Naru-kun, you're telling me Jiraiya-sama screamed like a little girl when girls found out he was peeping on them. Suppress her giggles when she thought about Jiraiya screaming in such a manner. It's true. Naruto grinned in that special way which must be genetic because his father smiled in the same exact way. Naruto put his arm around Anko's shoulder, feeling comfortable around her now that he realized she wasn't going to kidnap him and torture him. Anko blushed bright red when she felt him put an arm around her. She was many who had seen him change from a loud-mouthed idiot into being one of the best ninja in the village, and like many of the women, she was smitten with him. It had been many that Anko had become a completely different woman since Orochimaru had died. Still she was the same scary lady who used snake jutsu, thrown skewers from her trees to make a picture, and overall someone who was extremely hostile when provoked. At Ichiraku, yes, time for more guy insanity. Hello Tsuki. May I say you look most youthful today. And your daughter has the flames of youth burning in her as well. Though it looks like her face is a strange shade, stated boldly as he struck the good guy pose yet again. That's because my daughter is lovesick. Tsuki replied as worked on making sure the broth for ramen was just right. Is that so? Who is she smitten with? Guy's teeth gleamed with light shining brightly. Who else? Our number one customer, Naruto. Tsuki laughed softly, which became louder when he saw Ayame blush bright red from embarrassment. Tou-san. I am out feeling even more embarrassed since she hadn't even told Naruto yet, and her father had figured it out. Tsuki and Guy laughed loudly, since it was as they felt it. Adora Ayame of course was simply embarrassed. She wanted to tell Naruto but it was hard to tell him. And back with Naruto and Anko. I have to go Naruto, I haven't thanked you properly for ridding us of Orochimaru. She then pushed Naruto against a wall and kissed him deeply. Naruto simply closed high, blushing faintly. It was a bit shocking at first, but Naruto found he liked it. Naruto had pulled her close, returning the kiss. After a few minutes Anko broke the kiss and blush. Have to go on another date Naru-kun, and thank you for getting rid of Orochimaru for me, and for the village. She then backed away from him still blushing, before leaping where she needed to be. I sure seem to attract the unusual onesie. Hey, but Anko is really pretty if you think about it, Naruto thought quietly with a faint blush on his. Naruto just blushed before walking to Ichiraku Ramen. He was still a bit hungry, he just needed one bowl to make him full. He sat down at his usual seat, having passed Ga reached the stand. I'll have the Hokage in training special ramen, Naruto sighs. This ramen meal was a combination of all meats in a miso broth, and the Naruto size port they had just for Naruto. Coming right up, and because this is your billionth bowl of ramen, you get a special prize. Tsuki smiled at Naruto as he began to prepare Naruto's ramen for him. Naruto mention of special prize, he liked prizes cause they were always good. Cool, what do I win? Naruto grinned as he shifted his attention to Ayame, who he saw was blushing get to marry Ayame. Tsuki proudly proclaimed, at which Naruto and Ayame had shocked, yet blushing faces. Naruto then fell backwards off the stool which he had been. Naruto-kun, was all Ayame could say as she ran around to help Naruto up. As luck would have it, Tsuki pulled out a camera and took a picture of this smiling happily. After Naruto and Ayame had collected their composure, they looked at Tsuki like he had gone mad. At the rate you two were going, there was no way you two would get TM quite serious. Tsuki calmly stated before setting out 2 bowls of ramen at the stand. Now consider this your first date, he said before laughing heartily, enjoying Naruto and Ayame sat at the stand not quite understanding, but they both figured they should just go with it. To-san, you're not just doing this for publicity just because Naruto-kun is going to be the next Hokage, are you? Ayame was quick to ask before starting to eat her ramen. Already eating his ramen, it was delicious beyond compare in his mind, though it would be a far cry from the truth if he said he only ate here because of the food. Anyone came to see Ayame, just Naruto and Ayame were a bit slow to tell each other how they felt. Heck, it's the reason why Ino tried to keep Naruto away. Of course Ino thought prettier than she was. No, of course not. I'm doing this because you two are cute together, and don't you dare think I haven't noticed. He chuckled in a fatherly manner as he watched Ayame at their date. It was probably the happiest he had seen Ayame, if you didn't count her reaction when Naruto came back 3 years ago. Meanwhile at the Hokage Tower, I see, so the Raikage sent you here as per the arrangement for peace. You will meet Naruto tomorrow and the wedding ceremony shall take place in about 3 weeks. Calm and relaxed, the things she had to do just to maintain peace between Kumo and Konoha. She couldn't believe who the Raikage had sent for the political marriage. Jiraiya's reports on this one. Yugito ni another container of a demon. Tsunade knew that Yugito was just like Naruto. Why is that, Hokage-sama? Shouldn't the political marriage take precedence? Yugito was quick to ask, feeling she was being delayed by some plot. True, but Naruto has 2 weddings already, one to Ino Yamanaka, another to the Hyuga heiress, so had we known you would be arriving today we would have arranged. Tsunade was being as honest as she could. She knew that the Raikage had sent this girl here to assassinate Naruto. Send a demon to kill a demon, but neither were demo containers. Fine, where will I be staying then? The female container asked with the most calmness she could muster. This Anbu squad will take you to your temporary housing. Tsunade motioned as 10 Anbu ninja entered the room and quickly left with the Cloud Ninja. Tsunade knew T would be able to handle Yugito. Naruto would probably reason with her and get her to see the light, like he had in the past. The kid wasn't likely to die until he becomes Ho, even after that it wasn't likely he would die then. And back with Naruto. Naruto had finished his meal of ramen, and was now telling her another of his stories that couldn't have possibly happened, except maybe in a parallel world where nothing sense. Of course it was all quite true, because the story was about Jiraiya being beaten to a pulp by some girls at a hot spring. And that's when Ero Sennin screams like a. After Naruto said this, Ayame giggled. Of course Jiraiya was standing behind them and there were tears running down his face. Naruto, I thought we had an agreement. You weren't supposed to tell anyone about that. I thought we were friends, huh? Jiraiya was a bit irritated that his student was to almost every girlfriend he had now. No, Ero Sennin, the agreement was I wouldn't tell anyone that you still love. Naruto was cut off by Jiraiya clamping a hand down Ov mouth. Jiraiya was nervously laughing, because he didn't want that to slip out ever. Now, I don't think anyone needs to be hearing that, mostly because it's private. Twitched heavily. This wasn't something he wanted anyone to know, especially the person he was reportedly accused of being in love with still. Naruto, you really shouldn't intentionally embarrass Jiraiya. Ayame managed to say before giggling again. Jiraiya sighed and stopped covering Naruto's mouth. He wouldn't that one down ever. So say I accidentally let it out, then it's okay. Naruto asked sheepishly. Jiraiya's eye twitched. He didn't like the sound of that, he liked living without embarrassment. Why do I suddenly feel like there is impending doom? He craned his head around to see behind something, with pink hair, green eyes, a red dress and cracking its neck Haruno, Tsunade's apprentice, and little to Naruto's knowledge someone he was supposed to be on a date with tonight. Naruto. You are supposed to be on a date with not with the girl who feeds you ramen. Jiraiya was supposed to inform you of that. Naruto was then sent to the ground with a punch to the top of the head. Ouch! Naruto screamed out. He then stood up and glared at Jiraiya, who was laughing in enjoyment. You're supposed to tell me stuff like this. Before Naruto Jiraiya over the head, he was dragged away by the strongest kunoichi in Konohagakure. There goes your fiancé Ayame, hope you're ready to fight for his attention. Jiraiya calmly said with the infamous smirk of Jiraiya on his face. Ayame just rolled her eyes. Shish, to fight for Naruto, she could get his attention with ramen. She knew the secret recipe of the Ichiraku ramen. Back with Ino in the decorating committee, Ino returned and was about to go bridezilla on her reluctant decorating crew. Shikamaru, Choji, and Kiba were cowering in fear of Ino, the most brutal bride-to-be was be hostile. Oh man, where is Naruto when we need someone to take the heat off? Smack! Ino hit Shikamaru right over the head before he could complain anymore. Any more complaining and you will be charged with the task of fetching Naruto from Forehead Girl. Ino quickly threatened the three men, who quickly gulped and nodded was an impossible task, and all who were charged with the task would be brutally beaten to a pulp. We'll be good, they quickly replied in unison in fear of Ino, whom the bride from hell. And back with Naruto, Sakura-chan, was it really necessary to hit me over the head? Naruto rubbed his head, feeling a lump that was forming from the force of the punch. He didn't quite know, suddenly showed an interest in him, but he wasn't going to complain. To make a point, never be late to our dates from now on, or else I will put chakra behind the punches. With that said, the pink-haired kunoichi then flicked Naruto's for a gentle smile. Naruto couldn't help but smile at her before eating some of the food Sakura had brought for them to eat. Fried chicken, strawberries, tea, and she brought so for Naruto. I brought foods you would like, greasy, sweet, ramen, tea, and of course me. Not hitting me. It had been this fact about Sakura that caused Naruto to end up with Ino. Simply put, Ino didn't try to knock his teeth down his throat for an honest mista, easier to get results by yelling at him, and forcing him to go shopping with her. Yes, as long as you conduct yourself like an adult. She calmly threatened. Naruto just nodded his head since he didn't quite like the idea of being hit again. Okay then. Shortly after they had started eating, the impossible happened. Naruto was full. Never had this been recorded, he always had room for more, but he ate most of the food. The unimportance of food had given them time to talk finally. A thing they hadn't done since they were younger. Somehow in the 3 years they simply just grew apart, become more dominant in Naruto's life. Naruto, did you know Jiraiya-sama and Tsunade-sama were married? Sakura looked to Naruto, who she was latched to. Naruto nodded softly. He had known for a while, was a secret. Yeah, I know. Dunno why they ended up divorced, but I think it has to do with him being a pervert. Naruto chimed in quietly. He then looked to Sakura, quiet, remembered exactly why he had a crush on her when he was younger. You know, I always found your forehead to be one of your best defined features. It's what makes you, you. Naruto smiled softly and kissed her on the forehead. Sakura waved that her cheeks for the moment matched her hair, and then things started clicking. She realized back when they had just become a teen, it was really Naruto disguise saying those sweet things to her. This caused her to blush even more. Naruto, why is it you ended up with Ino Pig? You just quit showing interest in me one day. Why? Sakura asked calmly as she regained her composure. She never quite you, her biggest fan just completely gave up on her. Too many mixed signals, and you always hit me, and Ino never did anything like that. Naruto didn't have any other reasons for why, Other than the obvious, he thought and he appreciated the kindness she had shown him after he returned from training with Jiraiya. Oh, I guess I learned a lot from Tsunade, but still I was a bit stupid. I let you get away. The pink-haired Kunoichi looked down slightly. Sakura jumped slightly when she being pulled into a gentle embrace. Her face turned the most interesting shade of pink, much like the flower for which she is named. You know, you have another chance, Sakura-chan. Naruto gave Sakura his most genuine smile. He just simply stared deep into her eyes. Sakura blushed again when in that moment she began to understand how Hinata felt when she was around Naruto. Sakura nodded and rested her head on Naruto's shoulder. She relaxed slowly and just nestled close to him. She smiled serenely. Thank you, Naruto-kun, she quietly said, snuggled close. She had never thought she would have gotten a second chance with Naruto, but thanks to this old law she had a chance to be with Naruto again. Naruto, if why Jiraiya I will have to hurt you, no divorce for you, you will suffer if you're a pervert. Sakura somehow managed to slip in one last threat. No problem there, you can trust me. Naruto would sooner die than be like the arrow Sennin. He had no shame whatsoever. Naruto could just see Jiraiya proudly proclaiming a super pervert. Naruto smiled and stroked Sakura's head softly as he held her close. You don't have to worry about me being like him. He calmly reassured her with AG, and then as the sun slowly set in the horizon the two shared a soft and tender kiss, enjoying a moment of true happiness. As nature has it, the most perfect moments are always ruined. Just then a huge sunset backdrop appeared out of nowhere. And the two most embarrassing ninja in Konoha good guy pose. Who else but Lee and Guy? They always did this for no reason. Oddly enough, the third person there was Tenten, who was growling and clenching her fists. Smack, crack, can't you two be serious for a moment without it turning into a drama? Quote. Tenten fumed for a moment. Now stop following me. And stop the speech, springtime of youth, it's getting embarrassing, you two. Tenten huffed angrily before putting on a cheerful face. Naruto and Sakura just stared at this scene. Naruto wasn't so much shocked considering the recent events in his life that made no sense. So the sweet Tenten suddenly bought former teammate and former sensei over the head wasn't so shocking. Naruto-kun. Tenten quickly ran over, standing at a distance, her eyes sparkling lightly. Naruto of course became more nervous since he knew what was coming up. I owe you to come over to my apartment tomorrow evening for dinner. There it was. Naruto eyed Sakura cautiously, afraid that another catfight would erupt. Tenten, couldn't you wait until my date with Naruto-kun was over? Numerous veins popped out of Sakura's forehead. Naruto quickly nodded to answer Tenten's question. When it happened, the weapon mistress and the chakra mistress began to argue. I don't see any reason why I can't. You don't own Naruto. Tenten hastily replied, and Naruto's eye twitched. Naruto, you are now my eternal rival. I am jealous of your luck with women. I too hope to have as much youthfulness as you. Before Lee could continue, he was struck by the two arguing women. Shut up, Lee. The two women shouted out as they momentarily stopped their arguing. Naruto was being pulled back and forth between the two like he were a rag doll, the unconscious Lee at this moment, because he knew this argument would continue into the wee hours of the next morning. Another day, another insane situation. Dad, did you go through this too? Naruto managed to mutter as the two kunoichi continued to jerk him back and forth. Naruto eventually got to finish his date with Sakura, but not after Tenten and Sakura's fight escalated. Naruto had finally managed to get home, and as he sneaked through he carefully cracked his door open, making sure there was no one waiting for him this time. He sighed with relief when there was no one in his room. He then heard a knock and sighed softly. He dragged his feet behind him as he walked to the door and opened it slightly, and his face turned pale as he saw Gaara standing there. Naruto, what's this I heard about you dating Temari? Who boy? Gaara didn't sound amused. He sounded as amused as Kakashi when someone took Ika Paradise. Gaara, I can explain. Naruto was tired, very tired, and Gaara decided now was the time to talk as he used his sand, albeit weaker now, to push the door open. Then, explain, the unamused redhead walked in and sat down at the kitchen table. Naruto quickly sat down, keeping a safe distance from Gaara. I already know about deal, but my problem is, you. Naruto rubbed his temples, afraid of what Gaara would say next. He knew Gaara had a temper that matched to Yuya's, and that in itself was scary. You didn't ask me to set you up. At this, Naruto's jaw hung open in shock before his face hit the table. This couldn't have been any stranger. Gaara wasn't amused that N asked for help. Naruto, you are going to make me the best man for the upcoming wedding, right? Naruto just chuckled at this and smiled at his best friend. Of course I am. Gaara, you're my best friend. With that, the two laughed. No one had ever really heard Gaara the natural way. Only Naruto had ever heard this. The next day, Naruto had been free of harassment for a change, so he decided to go check out the mansion since he would be living here quite soon. He heard a rustling in the nearby TR, looked up to see several of his friends hiding in the tree. Shikamaru, shouldn't you be laying in the grass watching the clouds, or something? Not with Ino acting so psycho. How troublesome. I pity whoever ends up teaching the children you two spawn. Hyper and bossy, the lazy bum said before muttering abo a drag. Naruto shook his head, and threw a pebble at Shikamaru, knocking the bum out of the tree. What the hell, Naruto? The lazy Shikamaru didn't enjoy injuring his pride. I have enough on my plate today without you guys getting me dragged into decorating for my wedding. When he finished that sentence, he received glares from Shino, Shikamaru, and Kiba. Get him. He should be the one stuck with Bridezilla all the time. Exclamation mark quote. Kiba loudly shouted. Naruto's face turned pale as he saw 4 of his friends cracking their knuckles. Ray Naruto a beat down. Author's note. I felt like a Benny Hill chase scene, so if you know the music, picture it being played. Naruto quickly spun on his heel and began to run away, as the 4 angry friends. He skidded as he rounded a corner and continued onward, trying to get away from them. Alley was too wide for Akamaru and Kiba to run down, so they ran around to the other side of the alley and blocked it off. Naruto skidded to a stop and looked left and right. Came from one side, Shino, Shikamaru, and Choji from the other. He quickly ran up the side of one of the buildings, just in the nick of time as the 4 pursuers crashed our other. The 4 quickly followed him up to the rooftops and began to chase after him again, and as they passed a billboard, Naruto pulled away a cloak that he used to hide with his clone, and laughed in a cheeky manner. The 4 turned and saw Naruto and began to chase him again. Naruto then jumped down into the street and began running FA between people trying to get away. He couldn't avoid crashing into a hugging Lee and Guy, and after the 4 pursuers passed the knocked down Lee and Guy, they too joined in the chase. Of course, they show something about the flames of youth. Just then the pursuit passed Ino, Sakura, Tamari, Tenten, and Hinata, causing them to give chase too. The 5 women looked absolutely furious as they began to chase, though wanted to hurt Naruto, even Hinata, and when the Hyuga heiress is angry, watch the out. Just then the Naruto they had all been chasing vanished. It turned out to be another Kage Bunshin, and the pursuit stopped, except for Guy and Lee, who kept running until standing in midair, and they looked down for a moment then looked back. Would you believe it? The 2 said in monotone as they fell down to the river below. It would s Naruto was still the ultimate trickster. Meanwhile at the Hokage Tower, okay Ba-chan, I'm here, and with that Tsunade sent him flying into the wall with a flick to the forehead. Stop calling me that. I am not old. The Godime Hokage said with a twitching eye. Now sit down and be good until she gets here. Naruto sat down in a chair, rubbed his forehead. Even if he could regenerate, it still hurt. It wasn't like he possessed Guy's weird thick skull. His attention turned to a young just entered the room. When he saw her Hite 8, he began to freak out. A ninja from Kumogakure, what the hell was going on? The Cloud Ninja were enemies, or so he though. Naruto, it's been decided that you shall marry Yugito Ni, the girl sitting to your right, in 3 weeks. This is simply a political marriage to ensure a ninja war doesn't happen two villages. The Godime knew that this would be a chaotic situation. She could tell by the way the two were looking at each other they didn't really trust the other. This is the fearsome Uzumaki. He's no older than I am. The girl coldly and arrogantly made her point as she glared at Naruto. Well, excuse me, I didn't know you were expecting some stoic, possibly closet case. You have to look underneath the underneath. Naruto grinned at her, and didn't even glared at him. Naruto. Show Yugito around the village for a while, help her get situated in her new home. Tsunade prepared to flick his forehead again if he tried to argue his way out. Oh, hi, Hokage-sama. Naruto felt a chill run down his back when he was being polite to the old hag. But he didn't need another flick to the forehead. He stood up and walked slowly. I'm ready whenever you are. Alright Uzumaki, but my safety is in your hands. Don't screw up, the girl coldly said as she walked out the door. Naruto quickly followed her. He didn't trust her very much. She would try to kill him while he slept. Sometime later, okay, so I showed you the clothing store, the grocery store, the training grounds, the hospital, weapons store, and now the pinnacle of the village, Ichiraku Ramen. Naru, the tour of the village was finally over. And what are those two? The blonde Kunoichi asked as she pointed at Konoha's strong yet most embarrassing ninja in another hug fest. My advice is try to ignore them when they do stuff like that, it's painful to watch. He gave a somewhat sarcastic look as he looked away from them. Just then Lee ran up, went into the good guy pose. You are a vision of beauty. Will you be my girlfriend? The disturbingly energetic taijutsu expert proclaimed. At this Yugito just blinked look-and-eyed Jonin. He was unusual, very, very unusual. Sorry, I'm engaged. She grabbed hold of Naruto's arm and pulled him close to her. This would be the only way to get the creepy, bug-eyed, and overly energetic ninja. Ah, I see. Exclamation mark. That is why you are my eternal rival Naruto. Your fires of youth burn more brightly than mine. I must try to be as youthful as you. With that the annoying Lee ran to run laps around the village. Naruto and Yugito simply watched with horror. I hope that weirdo will leave me alone now, Yugito didn't want to admit, but her skin crawled at the fact a guy with giant eyebrows was hitting on her. Maybe marrying dolt named Naruto wasn't so bad. Elsewhere. This Sunday. Watch as we present Bridezilla vs. everyone. Kiba get the podium in place, Shino stop playing with beetles and help set up the chairs, Sakura stop daydreaming about Naruto and do someth helpful. Exclamation mark. And GAARA, you just keep on doing whatever it is you're doing, Ino was once again ordering everyone around as she continued to be in Bridezilla mode. Ino, calm down, you're starting to sound like a certain redhead, only you're not cussing yet. A dark-haired girl calmly said as she tried to mediate some peace in the clear wedding hall. Kin, I don't think that's such a good idea. 1, Ino is always this bossy, and 2, Tayuya is right behind you. Now your life wasn't saved by Naruto just so Tayuya could key later. Choji quietly said before being struck over the head with a folding chair by Ino. Who are you calling bossy? Ino was on the rampage. Fortunately Sakura snuck up and administered some sedative. This fortunately gave them a sigh of relief. We down in a chair acted calmer. Okay, we have 2 hours before Bridezilla returns. Get the chairs set up, get the decorations put in place, and for the love of the will of fire, get them set up according to pink-haired Kunoichi gave out the orders, then her attention shifted to Tenten sneaking away. Where do you think you are going? I have to get started cooking dinner for Naruto. Tenten then vanished, leaving a swirl of leaves. Sakura's eye twitched, simply because it took every fiber of her being to Tenten. Shaw. Who the hell does she think she is? It's bad enough I have to share Naruto with Ino Pig, and the most timid girl in the verses now ten. Question mark. If I had my way Naruto would be mine and mine alone. Exclamation mark. Quote. The inner Sakura was on a rampage, Sakura was still twitching with anger. And back with Naruto and Yugito, I guess I can stomach being married to you, it would seem you aren't as moronic as I had pegged you for. The blonde girl didn't seem to hold any punches. Despite the like an idiot, he seems to be very warm, something I never felt in Kumogakure. No, I have to keep focused on the mission. The Raikage wants Konohama's Uzumaki dead. He were troubled, and conflicted. She would have to kill Naruto, but she didn't see why. From all she could see, he was just a warm, compassionate man. Well, he practices polygamy, that's a bit weird, but he's a nice guy. She would have to worry about the complications later. She could simply not go through with it. She was after all outside the Raikage's sphere of influence. I better show you home, Yugito. I have to be somewhere in a little bit. He froze in place when she glared at him. The very fact that he had a prior engagement seemed to Nibi's container exude immense jealousy. I will see you tomorrow though, so please don't be too angry. Okay then, Naruto, you better keep your word, because I will find you and hold you to that promise. She smirked as he walked her to her accommodations. She didn't seem to respond well to threats, but that's because she didn't know about the other women in his life. Once they reached her apartment, she walked in and slammed the face. Have a nice day, Yugito. He scratched his head in shock of what she just did. He thought she was warming up to him, but yeesh, that was harsh. He then decided to get dinner date with Tenten while he could. Hours later at Tenten's house, Naruto knocked at the door. He had a bouquet of flowers. He was ever the gentleman, especially when around Tenten, who was one of his closest friends. When the door opened, visibly drooling. Not from the smell of good cooking, no, it was because Tenten was the vision of beauty. Who would have known that if she let her hair down, and wore a Che-sam Chinese dress, she would be beyond beautiful. Naruto-kun. Hello. Tenten waved a hand in front of Naruto's face. She never knew this would happen. Hey, sorry about that, Ten-chan. He smiled, a tad embarrassed of his drooling. Not that there was anything to be ashamed of. It just made him look a tad perverted, the fact that Tenten was a beauty under normal circumstances. Naruto just never saw her well dressed up, and there it happened. He began to stammer, much like the lovely Hyul look versus Veer very lovely Ten-chan. He blushed and handed her the bouquet of flowers. Tenten giggled and took the bouquet of flowers from Naruto. In all her years she had never seen him so shy. Hell, no one had ever seen him this nervous or quiet without around. It was for the most part funny. She then took his hand and led him into her apartment. She made him sit down on the couch and smiled sweetly at him. Sit there, finish cooking supper. Naruto nodded while still blushing. He wondered if he had this kind of effect on Hinata, since she was prone to stuttering and blushing when he was around. He found that having that effect on him. It was amazing. He had never seen Tenten in that light ever, but now she was a vision of beauty. Naruto realized the one thing that made name was Tenten, and his birthday is October 10th. If he was like Neji once was, he would think it was destiny. Just then Naruto's eyes were covered. He leaned his head back and smiled softly. I wonder who is covering my eyes. He rubbed his chin and smiled happily. He knew it'd see the beautiful Tenten. Could it be the beautiful girl who invited me to dinner? Tenten giggled as she moved around to the front while keeping Naruto's eyes covered. She then sat on his lap and smiled sweetly as she uncovered his eyes. The food was she wouldn't pass up this chance to spend some much needed time with Naruto. She wouldn't get another chance like this. She leaned in slowly and planted a soft affectio his lips. Dinner is ready, but I want to spend time with you. She smiled sweetly as she nuzzled her face into the blonde's neck. She seemed to be enjoying this moment for all it. Looked deep into his eyes and smiled. She saw something that she could never see in the Hyuga prodigies, kindness. This was exactly what attracted her to Naruto. In the, let's have dinner then we can return to this. Tenten smiled as she got off of Naruto's lap and helped him to his feet. She then led him to the table. There was quite them all Chinese dishes, which was no surprise since Tenten seemed to enjoy the Chinese culture. And the two of them began to eat. The meal was quite loved by the blonde had expected. The two of them were now sitting on the couch, Naruto's arm was around her shoulder, and Tenten was practically glowing with happiness. She then moved so she was her eyes were looking deep into his as she leaned close and kissed him deeply. Naruto ran his fingers through her hair as he returned the kiss, his face turned red when Tay kissed his neck. Ten-chan, we better stop before we go too far. He was cut off when Tenten put a finger to his lips. I won't hear any of that, Naruto Uzumaki. She grabbed his hand and led him to her room. Now this would not be the Kyuubi container had done something intimate with a girl. In fact, Naruto's first time was with his fiancée, one Ino Yamanaka. It was a few months back, but that's a special that no one needs to hear about, especially her father. I want for you to make love to me tonight, Naruto-kun. I love you, and I know that if I didn't dance around the sub have been your girlfriend sooner, so please do this for me. I want you to be my first. We use cookies. By using our services, you acknowledge that you have read, and needless to say that night there was a fair amount of racket coming from Tenten's apartment. Of course, the good news was Tenten's apartment was soundproofed so not noise escaped. This hopefully wouldn't come around to bite him on the hopefully. The next day, at some point, Naruto and Tenten had spent a good part of the night making love. Tenten was sleeping soundly, and with a smile on her face that put his to shame. It was safe to say a good job. He was also sound asleep, meaning for the first time he might have become exhausted. All he knew was he enjoyed it, and he didn't know some of the things even possible. Wake up, Naruto-kun, it's already noon, the brunette cooed softly as she tried to wake Naruto up. She quickly gave up though and just snuggled close. It was too comfo bother not being like this. She then closed her eyes and just continued to rest with her lover, feeling complete when she was with him. It was futile to even bother getting then paradise was lost when Guy and Lee made a dynamic entrance into her room. Guy-sensei, Tenten has done something most unyouthful! Quote. Lee cried out in shock to find his teammate and friend sharing the same bed. Don't look, Lee. Tenten has done something she should have waited until she was married to do. Guy quickly commented before the two hugged and began to cry. This to wake Naruto up. His eyes had gone Kyuubi. No, wait, he was just tired. Get out of this room now, or I will hit you with Fuden Rasengan! Quote. Naruto quickly threatened as he sat upwards. This of course caused Lee and Guy to leave apartment in fear. Naruto muttered about idiots in spandex and snuggled close to Tenten, wanting to get some rest. The next day, Naruto, having fully rested up, left Tenten's apartment early at the crack of noon. He hadn't expected that to tire him that much, but it had. He was hoping he wouldn't run in though. He promised to spend yesterday with her, but considering the situation it couldn't be helped. Then it happened. She grabbed him by the collar of his coat and dragged. You owe me a date, Naruto. Yes, Yugito dear, he sighed as she dragged him off. Another day, another impossibly crazy situation. Speaking of which, he had promised to Yuya he would meet her for D. He better get something for the hangover then. This place looks good. She pointed to the sign, and Naruto saw it was the sushi restaurant, not exactly his cup of tea. But if it would make her chill out, then so be it. ONC restaurant. Naruto looked at the menu for a while and just decided to go with whatever looked best. I saw the freaks running out of your girlfriend's house, screaming about unyouthful things, so I knew you were there. I could have dragged you up there, but the Nekomata blushed deep red. She simply didn't feel ready to see him. But if you stand me up ever again, I will hurt you. You promised to take me to dinner yesta. Hi, I know Yugito-chan, but I was really tired. I won't stand you up ever again. He was simply afraid that she would hurt him next time he did it. Wait, did I just call her? Hardly know her. He saw her face become a deeper shade of red. He then blushed softly. He wondered what it was about her that reminded him of a cat. There was the slanted eyes, and a love of fish. You sure like sushi, Yugito-chan, like you have room to talk, Naruto-kun. I heard you inhale ramen like it's going out of style. She quipped with a smirk, then she realized she called him Naruto-kun. But she was finding herself growing fond of this boy who looked like he was a fox. What she didn't know was she had more in common with him than that. Sometime later, after she had tried every kind of sushi, "Thank you for a wonderful day, Naruto-kun," she then kissed him on the cheek and walked off. Naruto just stood there staring in disbelief of what had just happened. The Met had started to warm up to him. He checked his watch then and saw it was time to get to the bar for drinks with Tayuya. And he simply groaned some. He wondered how acted when she was drunk. Maybe he would be lucky and she would be a happy drunk. It after all did wonders for Tsunade. She seemed a lot friendlier when she was drunk. Don't call her Ba-chan. At the bar, Naruto. About time you got here, numb nuts. That wasn't as bad as the usual insults she used. He saw the empty bottle of something on the bar and could only guess. Next to her and asked for a bottle of tequila. Don't ask, I just like tequila. Closing parenthesis. To whatever. Naruto cheerfully said and downed some of the strong alcohol and he coughed slightly. Man, that shit burns. I knews I could corrupt ya sooner or laters. Tayuya's language was slurred slightly due to her inebriated state. Several rounds, and toasts later, the duo slinked out of the bar, hanging off of each other. Naruto was less intoxicated than the redhead. Tayuya giggled like a school girl as she looked at Naruto. "Kanyake, I guess I can try, what's your secret?" Naruto stumbled some as he walked Tayuya home. He was